Long Road to Friendship, Chapter 7, Science Fiction. Sunset clapped a hand over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. She stared down at Twilight, taking some satisfaction that her scream had at least startled the girl back some ways. Sunset tried to take a few calming breaths, but she could still feel her heart beating erratically. She removed her hand and took an aggressive stance.
"What the hell are you doing here?"
She half-shouted, half-hissed.
"I go here now?"
Twilight said simply. Sunset's eye twitched, something she noticed it had been doing a lot more often.
Of course she would come here of all places. Oh, dear Celeste, what have I done to deserve all of this? And why are you choosing to bug me of all people?
Sunset asked in a low growl.
Because
Twilight took a deep breath.
Because I want to know the truth. The truth?
Sunset asked incredulously.
Now you want to know the truth? You can't handle the truth!
Twilight looked back at her with a determined expression that Sunset instantly grew to hate.
That's for me to decide, isn't it? Everyone in the school seems to already know my name, and one of them even called me Princess, and I want to know why. Yes, I guess that first part is true.
Sunset mumbled. She looked around at some of the students who were beginning to gather and stare at the two girls, who looked like they were about to break out into a fight. Pointing a finger at Twilight, Sunset said,
"Lunch, cafeteria, corner table."
She looked over to Pinky and the four girls looking over her shoulder.
"You five, be there."
With that, Sunset turned on her heel and stomped away, practically hissing at anyone standing in her path.
"By the way,"
Twilight called to her.
"you know that there's a tear in your jacket, right?" "Yes, I'm very aware that there's a tear in my jacket."
The first day back to school was a horribly dull affair for Sunset. Class seemed to drag on forever, and it didn't help that she couldn't even hear the teacher, while with all of her classmates whispering to each other about what they remembered from the dance or what they did on their week off. Sunset was actually relieved when the lunch bell rang. She was eager to get this over with and finally say good riddance to Twilight Sparkle. Rarity fell into step next to her, a worried expression on her face.
"Sunset, what exactly do you plan on telling Twilight?" "The truth." That's what I thought."
Rarity bit her lip.
"Well, while I think honesty is the best policy, are you sure that's a good idea?"
Sunset stopped in front of the cafeteria door.
"Do you have something better in mind?" No, not really." "Then shut up and follow along."
Sunset threw the doors and marched inside. Rarity put her hands on her hips.
"But there's no need to be so rude."
Sunset grabbed a tray of cafeteria food, making a face of disgust. On a normal day, she would just persuade someone with a good-looking packed lunch to trade with her. Now she was forced to eat... well, looking at the bowl of green mush, Sunset wasn't sure if she wanted to know what it was. She sat down at the table in the farthest corner of the room, Rarity taking a seat next to her. Twilight quickly appeared and sat down across from Sunset. Shortly after, Pinky showed up, scooting in next to Sunset, while Rainbow, Applejack, and Fluttershy all crammed in next to Twilight.
Why exactly are they all here?"
Twilight asked.
"Because they're kind of important. Unfortunately."
Sunset added under her breath.
"Hi!
Pinky reached over the table and took Twilight's hand, shaking it vigorously.
I'm Pinkie Pie. It's so nice to see you again." "Again?"
Twilight looked at Sunset, who simply had a bored expression.
"We'll explain in a second, dear."
Rarity smiled. She shook Twilight's hand after Pinky finally let go.
"You can call me Rarity." "Rainbow Dash."
Rainbow grinned. Applejack tipped her hat.
"Name's Applejack, and if you're wondering, no, I normally don't wear dresses to school." "I'm Fluttershy."
Fluttershy said in a surprisingly clear voice.
Hooray, we're all friends here."
Sunset said in a sarcastic tone. She drummed her fingers on the table.
"Now, where do I start?" "The beginning, silly."
Pinky offered, and Sunset ignored her.
"Alright, do you remember what I told you about the other world on Saturday?"
Twilight nodded her head.
"Wait, Saturday?"
Rainbow cut in.
"When did you meet with her?" "Sometime after I left you guys at the fair. Now, don't interrupt me."
Rainbow fell silent, but only after giving Sunset a cold glare.
"Like I was saying, the other world filled with magic is called Equestria. Its most dominant species are the 3 most common types of pony." "Wait, hold on."
Twilight laughed.
"Are you seriously gonna tell me that there's a world full of sentient magical horses?" "Yes, and what did I just say about interrupting me?"
Twilight cleared her throat, suppressing another laugh.
"Please continue." "Anyway, before I was rudely interrupted again, there are 3 main types of ponies in Equestria. Earth ponies, which are like the normal ponies here, only they live longer and have a slightly higher IQ, Pegasi, and unicorns. Then there are alicorns, which are powerful creatures with all 3 traits." Princess Twilight Sparkle, your other in that world, was an alicorn. She had a crown that had an incredible power source inside of it.
Sansa cast her gaze down to the unappetizing food in front of her.
I wanted it, and all the power that came with it, for myself. The statue out front serves as a gateway between our two worlds. Only it opens once every 30 moons for 3 days at a time. When it opened up last week, I snuck back in and took the crown. Unfortunately, I wasn't as stealthy as I could have been. There was a scuffle, and the crown ended up in...
She gave Fluttershy a dark look.
Unfortunate hands.
Fluttershy hid in her hair and ducked down in her seat.
The crown was then just going to be used as the prize for the Princess of the Fall Formal. I wasn't too worried about it then. I thought I was certain to win the title like I did every year.
Sansa gripped the table hard and clenched her teeth.
And then she followed me back here. She was so determined to get her stupid crown back, she barges in here and just ruins everything.
Rainbow gave a cruel smirk.
You mean by helping the rest of us become friends again and uniting the entire school to stand up to you and make sure you finally lose?
Sansa slammed her hands on the table and stood up, Rainbow copying her movements, a challenge in her eye. Both girls stared each other down while the rest of the cafeteria watched on in silence.
Yes!
Sansa said in a lethal whisper.
By doing that.
Rarity very slowly put a hand on Sansa's arm and pulled her back down to the bench. Meanwhile, Applejack did the same for Rainbow.
Please, let's try not to make a scene here, girls.
Rarity mediated. Sunset measured the ferocity in Rainbow's eyes. They gave a stern warning, daring Sunset to try something. Though it was tempting, Sunset wasn't in the mood to fight. She finally averted her glare to the back wall and continued her story.
Well, as Rainbow so nicely put it, the other Twilight Sparkle turned the whole school against me. She won the crown, but I wasn't going to go down without a fight. This is the part where it gets really good.
Pinkie whispered, mostly to herself.
After a few underhanded tricks, I finally snatched the crown for myself. When I finally put it on, I got all the power that I wanted. But...
Sansa stopped, unable to find the words to explain what happened next. She turned into a monster, an experience that still confused and even frightened her. That had not been part of her plan. What she felt during her time as a demon, all of the thoughts and emotions running through her at that moment, Sansa realized that she wasn't ready to talk about it. She couldn't talk about it, but luckily for her, Pinkie interjected.
So basically, Sansa turned into this really scary monster with bat wings and sharp claws, and then she broke the school and brainwashed all of the students, before saying, Twilight keeps getting in my way, and now I'm gonna destroy her, rawr! So she makes this big fireball and throws it at her. But we were Princess Twilight's friends, because she helped all of us become friends again when Sansa divided us, and we weren't going to let Twilight stand by herself. So we all got into this big group hug, which activated some more super cool magic. And then we floated into the sky, and shot a super pretty rainbow beam at Sunset, and she turned back to normal. Then we all danced, and Twilight went home. The end.
Sansa pointed at Pinkie.
That just about sums it up.
Twilight put her hands together on the table and rested her chin on them.
So, let me see if I've got this straight. There's another Twilight Sparkle who is a magical pony princess in another world, and you stole her crown so you could have more magic powers. But she chased you back to this world and brought the whole school together to vote for her instead of you for Princess of a Dance, only for you to take the crown anyway and turn into a monster. But the other Twilight and these girls stood up to you and fired some magical rainbow that turned you back?
Yep. Sansa nodded. Twilight was silent for a moment. Then she burst into hysterical laughter, clutching her sides.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You had me worried for a second. You looked so serious back on the bridge. I actually believed you. And the fact that you got all of them to play along, wow, you must be dedicated. Okay, I get it. Hayes the new girl, even I have to admit that was pretty good.
Twilight's laughter came to an end as she wiped the tears from her eyes. She looked around at the faces staring back at her. Only Pinkie was smiling, as usual. Twilight's own grin slid from her face.
Okay, I caught on. Why aren't you girls laughing with me? Because, Sugar Cube, we ain't joking.
Applejack said.
But you have to be joking.
Twilight gave a weak laugh.
You don't really think that there's a world filled with ponies and that she turned into a demon?
Twilight pointed at Sunset, who now wore an impassive face. Applejack nodded.
I do, because I was there when it all happened. I know it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. No, it isn't.
Twilight said, starting to sound angry.
Listen to yourselves. You're spouting off things that only happen in science fiction novels or children's books. Interplanetary travel is still a decade away at least, and you're telling me that there's another dimension that connects to this world? You're all crazy!
Rarity looked over to Pinky.
Show her the picture.
Pinky reached into her hair and produced a simple photograph, handing it to Twilight. Twilight took it, and her eyes grew to the size of dinner plates.
That's me. But how? And why do I have wings? Magic,
Sunset said.
Magic.
Twilight trailed off, then furrowed her eyebrows.
Or Photoshop.
I don't blame her for thinking that, but she's really trying her best not to believe it. Anyways, let's get on to our magical donators. Top donators are 630, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside Only One Thing, and Dash of Evergreen. Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rollins, Crazy Color 557, Stu Hex, Sword Brother and Mortar, Omicron Library, Will, Chris Twinkie, Hatzasa, Rightful, Maverick, Iron Sky, Badass Waffle, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.